So these two, well, they're self-explanatory, but Norina is giving group talks delivered in New York on the 5th of March, 1942. So the fact that she says plural, I think this applies to both these talks, the intuition of the impersonal self and the yoga of truth. So,
And remember,
okay.
it all happened during the Blue Bus tours.
Put that up.
Why, how
Oh.
can it's blocked?
No, it isn't. No, it
It's
can
not?
still show.
Can you see us?
You can.
No, this is.
Okay. So now that just shows him because you're not talking. Or I don't know why it's not showing. Can you all see the blue bus?
The Blue Bus?
There it is.
There it is. Oh,
There it is. All packed and loaded.
yeah, and my Baba lover friend at Green Hope Farms in New Hampshire, she painted it blue. It originally was green, if you could see.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, so
It was a
so the
loaded time, the Blue Bus time.
loaded indeed.
Really?
Intuition of the impersonal self is the title of the talk. The external world does not realize the real meaning of yoga as the science by which men can understand their own spiritual structure. The New Age is utterly ignoring the spiritual order within man. This is due to man's high evolution of his rational mind. If men were less rationalistic, they would be easier in their own spiritual attainment to higher consciousness. There is no real objection to attaining higher understanding of the real values, which are to understand within the ordinary human being as the consciously understanding human being. What is the fact of the God conscious human being? The ordinary human being has no idea of this fact. He can have a realized idea or experience of this fact. He cannot have a realized idea or experience of this fact because he has no real desire to understand above that which the ordinary human being calls the intelligent order of thinking. No human being nowadays has the right approach to this pure function within, which is the intuition. It is misinterpreted in general, and it is misinterpreted in particular by the psychoanalysts. They all have the superstitious attitude to think that the intuition is a false mental method to approach the inner or spiritual side of man. I am here speaking a normal language because I cannot talk a mystical language in this Western Hemisphere, where the rationalistic approach has fixed a definite outlook against this intuitional awakening in this new cycle of evolution. There are intuitional glimpses of the impersonal self through the grace. These are intuitional glimpses of the impersonal self through the grace of Meher Baba materializing in talks within the group in the USA. This new cycle of evolution has a definite purpose to fulfill in man's mental constitution. The new mental constitution of man will be to realize through intuition what the intellect or the rational method can never make man understand, and through understanding, transform them into a deeper consciousness of life. The new conscious of this age will be, therefore, that all men shall have a far deeper insight, such as intuitive understanding.
Intuition is a mental condition whereby man can understand the inner organic structure of his whole mind. When we say his whole mind, we must understand the Eastern viewpoint that the whole mind is all that is, was, and ever will be, the universally apparent world. We cannot figure it out in any different way, because this is exactly what men will have to realize in this new evolutionary epoch through their insight, which is the equivalent term for intuition. All these terms will also have to be rectified in the future through the actual, immediate experience of the individual, who will be capable of feeling within, through the intuitive sense, the right term. Terms and names are superfluous, viewed through criticism and diversion of opinion. When once the experience is synonymous to any kind of a term, those who can read mystical language are those who feel the inner meaning of no matter what term or word the writer is using. The mystical language altogether will in the future be much more appreciated, as the human being will have the real feeling for whatever is the sense or meaning within the term or word. The new age is apparently developing towards unification of thought, creativeness, and a pure feeling. These two diversive ways of understanding and knowledge will never be any more a matter of dispute. When once the head and the heart will have united in experience of the deeper meaning or sense, which is a mystical fact that men of the intellectual type cannot deal with. The new age can no more be defined than by the new awakening within the spiritual understanding. This new awakening within can no more be consciously developed by man himself through study or the ordinary three-body yoga science. And here is the point where enters the new avataric power of rhythm as the awakener of the new spiritual side of man. Whatever we may call yoga science has its end. When the fourth body, named the ethereal body, is stirred, brought to awareness into the realm of the mind in the self-conscious individual, this is namely what I call yoga of truth. The yoga of truth means the actual awareness of the spirit body as the soul substance of man. This is the so-called fourth body, which is the Christ body. It is the only form which the avataric figure shall use in this world, the earth, in this new dispensation of realized truth. It is not to be an uttered word in the ordinary sense that will be a divine personification of the avataric appearance. It will be the rhythm as power, that will do the awakening appeal to the general world as mankind. The rhythm as power will have to be so strongly experienced that it will subdue the intellectual reaction and make men realize within, through the intuitive awareness of the creative universal mind, that it is endowed with divine light. Men shall therefore then really and truly become conscious of what they all talk and think, the divine light. As I have said in my previous articles, the divine light cannot be realized by man until he has realized within himself the inherent fact of the awareness of the soul.
The human being today is deluded through too much intellectual understanding and knowledge about his own inherent God consciousness. Men have no idea of that which is the realization of the inherent God conscious state. When men talk about it, they dispute about the best of themselves, which is the possibility of being really acceptant and humble. To be acceptant and humble means to abdicate, to find through mental study, through intellectual research, through continuous borrowed knowledge, the true fact within, which is inherent, latent, but far beyond the intellect and all its imaginary possibility to find through struggle of its own thinking process, that which never can be found intellectually. The energy which is spent uselessly through mental research of that imaginary inherent God consciousness is almost pitiful. But what is there to be done? The intellectual seeker who comes to India to find truth is naturally honest in his intention, but very childish in his pretense to find it ready-made. No man can find it ready-made. It is the most tedious, hard, and difficult task to come up against, this finding of the truth. What is, after all, this truth of which everyone is so curious nowadays? The relativity of truth is not to be avoided, and to understand this is better than to be utterly agnostic and to deny the fact of truth, which is to be conscious within of one's own inherent God. Truth is nothing else but that. I come back to the term yoga of truth, and I state here for the general public of the Western world that it is to have been awakened within by the grace of the new avatar. The new avatar is a man. This man must be recognized when he manifests in his full power as the God who is needed in form of a man. To be needed by man means that man himself has not yet realized his own inherent God state and has to be made wholly, happy to be able to become that God man. For all human beings, it is a terrific task to attain to this higher state of consciousness. But when they once see with their own eyes, feel with their own heart, understand with their own intellectual discrimination what it is to be the fulfilled form of man, then they shall not hesitate to go on and find the path through which it can be possible to attain this ultimate conscious state called God. We are all superhuman beings as we are. Nothing is different in the inner structure of man. Only the external structure differs and makes men appear separate human creatures with separate ways of interpretation, separate habits, separate desires and needs. The human being in itself is in its spiritual structure in tune with its divine being, yet undetected God conscious state. So, yoga of truth cannot be any further pursued, studied, or found, or brought, or hired, or borrowed. It is grace from the avataric figure. This fourth body in all men, the same substance, and through this aware conscious feeling of this substance, shall man come to greater inner understanding of each one's needs. Only through this awareness of the ethereal form will man come to deeper understanding of what is meant by the new world order. All men have an idea of this term, but how childishly they figure it out.
Nothing will be new in this earth. No one will invent a new machine to detect the God within. Nothing can be done to make men happy. Nothing more will be done to create a new religious outlook. All has been done in the past ages, or let us say years, since the appearance of the last avatar, who was Jesus for the Christians and Muhammad for the Eastern world. These two great avatars have brought about a deep change in consciousness throughout all parts of the world. Men do not yet appreciate it. They will appreciate it after this world war is fought honestly and profoundly in all parts of the world. The deep changing consciousness which has come to its fullest fruition in this war shall progress during the new dispensation, which will last more probably another 30 years.
Most.
I'll read that again, that sentence. The deep changing consciousness which has come to its fullest fruition in this war shall progress during the new dispensation, which will last most probably another 30 years. The new dispensation has to be understood as the fact-making, order-doing, consciously experienced ethereal form in man, which is awakened by the avataric figure. This Christ-conscious figure, whose name is today Meher Baba, will not be misinterpreted when it shall create the fact within man which is above described. The new dispensation is the same old dispensation of all times when the avataric figure has been personified by the pure, selfless human being. It is nothing more nor less than the fulfilled form of the God-conscious divine human being that has the power to create in man what man has himself cannot create. All else is superfluous to be said on the fact of this new dispensation.
Okay, Baba. And now the second talk is called Yoga of Truth. Again, in that group talk in New York City. Divine consciousness is yoga of truth. The yoga is wrong when it is separated from the theme of man as God subject. Man is subjective realization of God. God is God as man. No one is God in himself till in the four bodies realized as subject of the almighty fact of power as the human being in its fulfilled form of God. Man is use of this power. Man is used by this power in all the four bodies of his own man. The time is ripe for all seekers of the East and the West to let the mind go and the heart come. Mayor Baba dictates through the intuition, the impersonal self of the Western disciple as follows. It is time to begin to die for the truth. Truth is the personified God as man. It is time to live for the truth, and that is the time when the God-man is present in the world to take the burden of men onto him, the self-personified human being. The way to say it is when he is dictating it to the mind of men in strife of self-realization to all men of the world. He is the same help, and that is the self-help in men's own self-deluded individual intuition. No man is self-help. It is all illusion. He says this here to all who think of themselves to be more than they are. He says this to all who think of themselves that they are God. To all he says, prove it, be it. Be it for all men in this world as fact which is revealed within as the self-acting order. He is here to say to all men in this world this: let all be done by him, the man who is God-knowing. Bring to him the faith of the blind animal whose blind faith he is in all its pure experience of conscious confidence. All men will feel consciously confident when he will speak the word of God-realized power. When he will say, come with authority of the human being that is reliable. I am consciously in the human being, the truth in its fulfilled state of light as vibration. I am vibration of truth, and this is action of yoga of truth. He would again say, men are self-conscious of this power when they see me. When men see me as I am, as the humble man, they know me as I am, because man is self-conscious of the power of the unselfish pure being. Always he assures men that they are good, that they are real, that they are better than they seem to be. He tells them to be sure to be God and not the ordinary human creature, which is unself-conscious yet of being the God, and asks them to be good to all men in this world and make them follow the light. He tells them not to select the mother or the father types who is a saint, and not to think to select only great people or to think to select men of deep knowledge. He says that no one is good at self-realization, but the one who is real in himself. It is of no use to make selection of good or better people with deep knowledge of truth. Who is knowing God anyway? No one is real in knowing of God till he is self-conscious in himself, being the God. All men are equal to him. He is in all. It is all for the good of men themselves to go to him. First aid is God in men themselves. Why turn to men to ask for help? He is here to help. How does he help? He is helping by making men see, know, and feel the real meaning of life. He does not ask if they care to think about of it. He does it to them. He is here to make the fact of God be in all men sure, real, true. How will you ask? By letting the heart come forth and give first aid to others. He lets all be the heart and the soul and the spirit in one all fact, and that is yoga of truth. He says that he is for all in one. He is the fact of man as God in fulfilled power of God as man. That is all the same thing as if he were saying to men, "Come and I shall redeem you." It is yoga of truth that the master governs in all the four portions of life of man. Yoga of truth is to be the fact of power and to make it be the action within man. This is fact of God-man, whose name all have to use. To use the name of the God-man is to make the best of it. If you believe that God exists, if you know that God is power, then what is the difficulty about having a name for this power?
If the name were an empty fact, then of course it would be unnecessary to give a name to this power. But as nothing in this universe is disconnected from its original power, power means life, light. Original power means everything that is generating and creating effect or reaction. Power means everything that is fact, and fact means power. If power were radiance, vibratory light, waves, and magnetism, then we could put it in a very simple formula and say it is visible. As it is invisible, that which is power of God, men must have a symbol to make use of in order to suggest it to their own imaginative intellect. For this only reason, the God power makes the superhuman sacrifice to descend into matter, mind, is to give an impression to the childlike human creature that must have an impression to be able to use its good reacting way to make itself understood. The hierarchy, which is the body of 56 God realized masters, would never manifest if it were not to help humanity in its evolutionary struggle. When the hierarchy chooses their head man or charge man, Messiah, prophet, avatar, this man must manifest not only as human being, but also as God power. Today, this man, whose name is Meher Baba, has already manifested in manifold ways to his own disciples. These manifested miracles, or ways to make clear his superhuman power, are mostly through pure, imperative, and divine radiation of love. This love radiation is invisible. It does not express in the ordinary human way. It expresses in the masterful order, doing, influence within their own selves. This divine order, doing influence is not visible. To be internally detached from everything that is externally attracting and binding, men will come to a new outlook on life entirely and shall be able to create a new life and a new system of living for men in every part of the world. However, general mankind is not prepared for such speeded evolutionary process. It does not mean that mankind shall not also evolve much quicker under the influence of such men as the avatars, but not so far and effective as the few. This is to say, shortcut of the evolution of men in general is an invisible act of the transmutation of consciousness. In this preparation epic before I, Meher Baba, the supposed avatar, shall use the power of the word to manifest fully. It is naturally difficult for the general public to understand. Why should they understand? Why should they understand yet? I do not care whether they do or not regarding man's acknowledgement of his avatarship, but it is of utmost importance that the vibratory power of the name be carried into the minds of the people in general, because this vibratory power of the name of the supposed avatar can in itself hasten through stimulants and stir, which is naturally invisible, the evolutionary process. Therefore, it is utterly important that those who have the courage and the foresight and imagination should name the physical name of the man who is the supposed avatar. This too is an invisible action which will have its effect in some way at its time. When I say these things through the spiritual intuition or the intuition of the impersonal self, it is also vibratory power which goes from one end to the other, from the person who utters it to the person who hears it. When the public audience, to whom the name is foreign, rejects its importance, that too is an influential reaction. The name of the divine will is action of power. The name of the divine will is man as power. The name of the God-realized man is the name of the human creature who is mind, truth, fact, and motion-making, order-doing man. Meher Baba explains it here to the incredulous world and the scientist and the agnostic and all who know too little of the real experience, which is of the domain of the science as the mystical existence or life within. He says through the impersonal self's intuition of the Western disciple that he is conscious in helping all men to realize the struggle to earn their innate wisdom, which is based on real experience. He is in every human being the struggle, which is the strife of all men, in no matter which dimension of consciousness it is executing the realizing process. This realization process is auto-acting in all men to the state of mind impersonal as the realization of the self impersonal. The ethereal form is not attainable by self-help or the auto-reacting work of the individual self. The soul as the ethereal form is the basic power in all the different phases of the auto-reactive evolutionary process of men. It has to do the uppermost command in its indivisible way till man is able to see, know, feel its own realized conscious feeling as the ethereal form. This wonder of realization is to be expected for all who know, see, feel the power of the divine man and have the courage to name his name even before he has manifested to the world in general. To mention the name of the avataric personality is of great importance. All have to earn the fact of this importance. Jai Meher Baba. Lucky us.
Well, first of all, my apologies. I got distracted and I hadn't completed editing these, so there was a lot of spaces there and whatnot. Editing only in terms of reformatting when I copied them from the Mayor Baba Journal where they're published. It messed up the context of the words. So
When this is written.
No, no apology necessary. These are magnificent gifts from Baba through Norina for all of us, and you're making them, the two of you are making them available. It's the first time that I've actually heard a lecture from Norina.
Yeah.
Back in what year? What year was this one given?
Spring of
42.
40.
Spring of 40.
There was a group, and she doesn't say it was a Bob group, so I don't know whether it was a mixed group of people that had a connection with Bob. It sounds like it was a mixed group of people that were Baba lovers and maybe had heard about Baba. But she describes it, I'll pull it up again. She describes it in this one. Oh, darn it. I knew that. He describes it as from group talks delivered in New York, 5th of March, 1942. So that could be a public talk, or it seems like it's a public talk. Certainly some public.
And so these are all separate from what she gave later in the 40s at Carnegie Hall and that kind of thing.
Well, in 42, I'm not sure when she started doing Carnegie Hall talks.
It was later than that.
Was it later than that?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're in a later period of the 40s.
I would imagine that this was a more selected group that were interested in this kind of thing, or mystical things, because the other talks were more, I think they're magnificent myself. They're all charged. To me, it's a handbook for loving God day in and day out. They are, and the language is, I don't know, the language, you cannot call it mystical, but it was mystical for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this one sentence says, he is there right in your heart. I remember that and I went, wow. It had a charge and it was just a little sentence of a little piece. It's number 4 of these messages. And it intrigued me that it would have such an effect on me. Now, when, people say, well, this is semi-mystical, whatever, but to me, it's such a grace, and she was prepared for it and gave it. And what was that thing, Jonathan, of that man that Elizabeth Patterson wanted to be in touch with in Wilmington? Remember that? And because this man had been at the talks in New York.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, he was there. Bob Underwood was in his hometown. He heard, I'm trying to remember how it was, but there was a man there and he got the name, but no address or anything. So he's looking for this man who had sat in on Norina's talks, and he'd heard about him evidently from Elizabeth. And he turned out to be this unusual old man that was kind of like a homeless person or whatever in the town that he lived in South Carolina, North Carolina.
But what he said was, after the talks, she would be at the door shaking people's hands, and he would always want to go and shake her hand because he'd get a charge from it.
Yeah, actually, he was there with another fellow who was also kind of impoverished, and they thought, well, Norina and Elizabeth, they were these rich ladies. They thought they might be able to get some, so that was their motivation. And while he sensed that there was something more to it, and in this, and so they were in the library. Bob runs into him in the library, and when he brings up the subject of Mayor Baba, the guy says, "Mayor Baba," and he starts out shouting out his name.
These were very.
So today's the first day that I'm hearing these kinds of talks from Norina, and intuitively, I sensed immediately the same truth
Yeah.
Yeah.
all caps, that I experienced the first time I heard, the mystical messages and so forth. It's using a different medium to communicate slightly, but it's carrying that same truth that Mayor Baba came to share with us.
Yeah, in a
Yeah.
context that it can be appreciated by the audience, because she said that in an article one or two prior, that, in some ways when she came to the West, these articles that are written while she's in the West, not on the blue bus, she has to modify for the language. But you've said it really well there, because she can only be who she is. And that's going to come. That's really what she was saying, in terms of when someone speaks from the heart or from that deeper awareness, that just comes through.
And I don't hear Norina Matchebelli, as I have come to know her, previously in the Baba world. I have never heard an iota of her coming through either the mystical language or this. I hear Mayor Baba speaking. It's
Yeah, this is very funny. For years, I've shared on Center spontaneously. I didn't even know about the Blue Bus time. I would share, like this sentence says, love makes, I'll go up to someone, and this is from her diary. Love makes fast progress through its unbroken action of divine light. First of all, I'll say you want to hear something good, and this is the Baba teas. They're having tea, and it was very interesting. I would be very mischievous, and I'd know that a man would usually say, I'll have to think about that. And I went, absolutely don't think about it. Don't think about it. And then they would almost drop their tea on the ground. I was mischievous. But every time I shared, not that time, but when I would share at a sharing meeting, um, someone would say, that sounds like Norina. I says, you don't know what Norina sounded like, and there's no one on earth that knows what she sounded like. To me, it never sounded like Norina. I never thought of her as a celebrity. The celebrity might have helped Baba in meeting the hoity-toities and the royalty, but he wanted her to keep that title. But to me, she was just this head over heels in love with the avatar, with God in
and,
personal. She was just about gone.
and it's not just that she was in love with him, but she recognized him as the living God,
Yeah.
and said as much, both in the mystical messages and here today in what you just read. And it's that recognition and from as a human perspective, I mean, how can any human authenticize the reality of God? Because but she
Only
was
intellectually.
I'll change my thing. She was hard over heels in love with him.
that's much better.
She was intuitively over in love with him. Wow. But I love, and then I also love that, I mean, she wanted no part of meeting him I guess she was friends with Elizabeth and Malcolm Schloss and Jean, and they says, the master's coming, and she says, I'll not bow before any man. I will not bow. And the moment the boat docked, and she started weeping. I don't think she went to the boat, but she did go to Harmon in November, I think November 9th, November 8th. And when she met him, she knew he was a Christ. She fell at his feet after. but they have an old connection, you know?
And she said before meeting Baba, because I forget who it was that mentioned Baba to her, that and had said that people meet him and start crying. And Norina said, I want to weep. You know, and, and
She got her wish. She
yeah.
got her wish. She was so weeping that in between Baba meeting different people who had come, he would check in on her. She was put in a room. She, you know, she was
It was
really
serious.
so, yeah. And then
Yeah.
she wrote him that letter. Is it you that's been talking, you know, this voice in my head? Is it you? And he wrote her back. Remember that night that
Yeah.
Scott shared that? Yeah. And I
He,
thought, wow, you know,
but he wrote her back and
oh,
said, yes,
yes.
but don't
Yeah.
tell anyone yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And until that blue bus, you know, blue bus was taken off, and he told her and Elizabeth to start the journal. Wow. I mean, I remember when Scott McKay came down to Myrtle Beach, because, man, I'd been, in fact, I've recorded everything from Norina's gift. There was a Baba lover in Washington, and he says, I would spout off lines from the 40 messages, and he says, Tom Wolfe, he says, that's how to love God. I said, yes. And before I knew it, he wanted to pay for them to be recorded. So I was the volunteer, and Cliff Hackford here professionally does that. It's all recorded. But I didn't even know about the Blue Bus time. And in the Blue Bus book, no mention is made of this awesome,
It's
beyond awesome happening.
she was focused. Well, she hadn't really known much about Baba before she started working on it. And it gives the external facts, which
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
important and
Oh,
precious to
no,
have
it's
down.
a beautiful book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. That's parallel that in the Mayor Baba journals, you have the discourses, which gives the Baba's knowledge in a way that can be apprehended by the intellect and
Right.
reasoning, but then hidden
At the
until
same time.
now was the mystical language that was the dawning of the age of intuition and the experience of the I and the other I. I just want to say one thing quick that was interesting about the East and the West linguistically. In the West, I don't know about all of the language, whether it was Spanish, yo, or English, I, we have one sound for I. But in Sanskrit, the word for I is aham. And Krishna, it starts with the short a, ah. And Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, I am the ah. And is neutral. It's a sine wave. It's unmodulated phonation by a neutral vocal tract. And a sine wave has an equal amplitude, positive and negative. So it's a net zero. But it's it's power, it's aim, and so buried in the second syllable, syllable is a commentary on the first syllable. And um, and in that hum is the hum of creation. It's created at the bindu point, and in terms of speech, it's the M. And that's what Baba's Meher. And that vibration is powered by the but begins with ha, which is breath. So prana, the ultimate power of life, creates the phonation, which creates the vibration. And you see the hum, but anyway, it goes on and on. But the point is that the purpose of the mystical language is to point out that there are two eyes. There's the eye that we identify with, and there's the divine other eye that's within us. And Baba is stirring
That
the
now,
intuitive level in order for us to become aware, as Norina said in this, of our own particular eye. Everyone has to find God in the context of their own experience. And in that way, it in this time that where God is as if physically present,
yeah,
while we contact God through the impersonal God, because Baba is not in the body now, but we have the opportunity to have a personal relationship, just as Norina modeled, between her portion, which she speaks of, and Baba's portion. We have that, we can cultivate that within ourselves.
and about the Krishna that,
I
that
do.
Baba said about Baba said about the blue bus. He said, this blue bus is the same as the chariot of Krishna. And after my manifestation, it will be worshipped.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's so in Krishna's time, you had Krishna and Arjuna as two people, whereas at this dawn of the age of intuition, you have Narina expressing through intuition that relationship within her own consciousness of God and man. And I was talking with a friend who's more expert in, the Vedic knowledge and whatnot. And he said his understanding was that Arjuna was not actually aware that Krishna was a king, and that he was aware that he was God. But be that as it may, the sacred literature of the Gita, which describes Vedanta, was generated during the experience of the war that was the major event of Krishna's period. And now you have Baba in the blue bus, the equivalent of the
The
Krishna's
war.
chariot in the war of this Advent.
yeah.
And it's awesome. So
It-
that these last two, it gives a great, these
they
talks
were
in the
good,
West,
boy.
they give a context, a helpful context. But again, it's very interesting. The whole sequence of all of these articles is an unfolding that, and then was it the denouement, whatever they call it, anyway, and then all of a sudden these other 10 mystical life messages that, come up by Baba's grace through Scott and Adi Kairani.
I wanted to share something interesting. A long time ago, when the bookstore was at the Yoruba, and Kitty used to man the bookstore. Well, I went in one day. It was early 70s, and I found an invitation to one of Norina's talks. And already I've been into, Norina's gift and love these messages. So I went, oh, Kitty, look what I found. And she took it out of my hand and she shredded it in front of
Oh
my
my God.
face. And I will say this, one has to follow their heart, because I thought, Kitty, that's not going to stop me from going to these messages, But you could see that even then, the Mandali weren't into it. They didn't need it. They had God right there. And yeah, but he said they were like children, that we would appreciate them in the future. So we're sitting here with this, the closest thing to a war possible. I mean, it's like a mental bomb going out in your head if you just watch the news. It's like, whoa. And it's like, we need them. And that key of those key lines, I hear, act in mind, in vibration, to make in you life grow. And those are totally capitalized. And it is vibratory, and thank God for it. Because the noise of the world is so loud now. You better get the true vibration. Oh, and I love what it said on here about saying Baba's name. It's all in that name.
Mhm.
It's all there. But this is key. I mean, this, to me, this is fast-tracked intuition. I'm counting on it. I mean, you know, if I was a betting person, you know, I'd lay all my money there. Yeah. Quick. Oh,
Any other,
let's do that one.
well,
Sing one.
let's ask first if anybody, is anybody else?
Oh, let's have
Okay,
a
sing. What do you
short
want to
song.
sing? Which one?
Be you, be real. Be
Be
you,
you,
be real, be one. Be you, be real, be one. Be one in all in I and use of me. Be one in all in I and use of me. Be you, be real, be one. Be you, be real, be one. And see, they're vibratory. So if you're singing them to yourself and that oneness is rest in being, that calms me down.
Is that
Oneness is rest in being. Oneness is rest in being. Being is rest in oneness. Being is rest in oneness. Oneness is rest in being. Oneness is rest in being. I mean, you know, it's like taking a calm, you know, this little stuff, you know, it's like,
It
it's,
is amazing that the quintessence of the message of the mystical language is to inner calm, you know,
yeah, inner calm, yeah.
the cessation of the, I mean, it's,
Seeing with the heart.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I got the intuition. No, she was trying. I think she was trying to tell people that they should mention Mayor Baba's name to others.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Which
Particularly in her time, you know, that was before, you
heck,
know, go back to
message.
42, yeah. It's,
Yeah.
and you know, that letter that she wrote to Elizabeth in 47, you know, having Elizabeth recollect the tribulation of the 7 years prior, from 41 to 48. So I'm sorry, it was 48. The tribulation, you can see in these talks the way she addressed them, you know, what she was having to deal with, and even more in those letters, Judy, that Scott shared. You know, it was just amazing the amount of suffering that she and Elizabeth had to endure in in representing Baba in America during the war periods and subsequently in establishing the center.
But you
But
know,
let me
but
just
you
finish
know,
one last thing.
yeah.
But the thing, it literally, her health beginning in 46 was breaking down, and it was cause of depression. She was described as being overly sensitive so that she could, you know, so they were trying to protect her in a sense from some of the things she was exposed to. But when her health did break down and she went to India and Baba put her in rest, but when she came back, she still suffered the rest of her life from that. But at the same time that she was suffering, and the testament to what there was suffering in Baba's work, not suffering because of some, well, anyway, the testament to it was the fact that Baba said that during the new life, she and Elizabeth were living the new life for the benefit of the West. In a telegram. So they were totally working for him, and and Norina in a particular unique way in terms of this mystical language. That was unique to her.
Any thought about the 35 years statement?
What do you mean?
Yeah, no, you know, that was her best guess. So what, 35 onto 42 would have been 77. Um,
So Baba dropped the body when he was 76.
well, you know, Baba was, I think somebody can confirm this.
74.
74. Thank you.
Baba, you know, was, as I understood it, the, the atom bomb ended the war prematurely. Baba's perspective, because it was,
How's your
I,
Japanese?
I don't think that people would have thought it was prematurely.
In other words, the war could have gone on and continued as war, but be that as it may. But when he was asked the women about, do you want to have another big war or small war,
Right.
they requested small
Small
wars.
wars, yeah.
And so, you know, when you think about now, you know,
No,
what? Go ahead.
Jonathan, if I can clarify,
Yeah.
um, the women Mandali were with Baba, and he mentioned, or somehow the subject came up of another war, a third world war. And it was Mara that said, no, Baba, please, not another war, not another world war. And because it was his beloved Mara that asked, Baba said, okay, but then we'll have to have, it's like the world will have to, I don't know the exact frame of this.
Little.
The world will have to have um, small wars and natural disasters.
Yeah,
Many small wars and natural disasters. And
we have them.
I think I think he also mentioned too, there would be economic, you know, wars, you know, that, so it wouldn't be wars militarily, but economically. But
perhaps that's another time when he's
another time, yeah.
But at this time it was very simple, of many small wars and natural disasters.
I want to share this because this is someone in the Baba group, but I heard it from Laurent Weisberger late night. Was giving the talk on Jeff's spot, and he was new to Baba, and he went to someone took him to a meeting at the Shaws, at Darwin and Jean Shaw's. He's brand new to Baba. And during the meeting, Jean Shaw would serve cookies and some beverage. And so he went to the kitchen to get a beverage, and she pulled him aside and she started ranting and raving how mad she was that Norina had been saying that Baba was speaking through her. She says, she was so mad. She says, I was so mad I drove down to her apartment. And Norina answered the door, and she just unloaded on her. And Norina didn't say anything. And then Norina was just going to open her mouth to respond because they were in their living room by then. And all that Jean smelled was roses. So she turned around and drove back up to Schenectady.
Mm.
I mean, a lot of people smell Baba, have that experience.
Thank you both very much. I need to take off, but really thank you for this wonderful.
And thank you for your
Thank you,
initial
yeah.
observation.
Baba.
Good.
Yeah.
Hey, Baba.
Hey, Baba.
Hey, Baba.
Thank you all.
Wendy.
Hey, we didn't get to say hi to everybody.
I hope this gives you some laughs. We won't put you in another room. We'll like you. You should be laughing here.
Oh, I guess we've gotten.
Well,
Uh,
it is rather a joke when we're so intellectually advanced or we're so reasonable. We've developed it so far, and now we just have to go somewhere else, you know. It's like, wow,
I-
it's just
I-
like someone conks you on the head.
excuse me. I'd like to know which way the blue bus is facing. Is the driver's,
oh, you mean in Mehrabad? In
yeah,
Marizad?
Oh, that's
In Marizad, I think it
there's a,
faces towards,
Erich's room, I think.
well, it would be Balna too.
where did they take off the cab and the
Yeah,
engine? And
yeah.
where was that?
Where was the cab? It was
Well,
on
the
the
cab
right.
and the cab was, so on Mandalay Hall is one side, the blue bus, the back of the blue bus is closest to Mandalay Hall.
Yeah,
And the
See,
front
now,
bus
yeah.
was closest to where,
okay, there is no cab at all.
he sold it for parts.
Yeah.
He sold, he stripped it a lot, it was really funny.
I only say that because in Erich's book, he talks about that there was another door, which I don't remember seeing, as you go in the steps and you go all the way down, and Baba's bunk is there, or that stretcher maybe type of bed. And it said that there's another door back there that leads to where Baba, in his seclusion, could go out that door and use the restroom. So I'm thinking, I always thought I went in the front door, but and maybe that's true. I don't know.
I
Because
can't
there must be two doors. That one that you
Yeah.
go in, and there I've never seen the one that Baba would use to go out in the back.
Well, if it was like that funky bus that we used to, one of the buses that would take us from Mehrabad to Marizad, there was only one door and it was at the back. And then it had a cage between the driver and everyone sitting on the bus.
It's just the thing that I read.
Yeah.
Said,
You,
wow.
you may be right, but that one bus is like that. You enter from the back.
Anyway,
Okey doke.
all right. Thank you. That was great.
You Jay Meher Baba.
Wait, Randy,
Right.
do you want to say anything?
You're
You're
muted.
muted.
Just grateful. Just grateful. You've made my day. Thank you.
Oh, good, good. Yeah,
Baba.
yeah.
Long, there's laughter, long live laughter.
Yes, I'm with you on that.
And,
I'm with you.
it's like a time when you do not have to think.
Yes.
You don't have to think. Papa said so. I mean, geez. He says, don't worry, be happy. And it's hard to do that. But with this is, you would boggle your mind.
I do feel that the mystical language is the solution to don't worry, be happy.
Yeah.
Good point. That's a good
Yeah.
point for sure.
That was my experience in reading it, was all of a sudden I go,
Ah,
yeah.
Sometimes I think of Woody Allen's expression, life is much better now that I've given up all hope.
yes, that's true. It's like that. Yeah, yeah.
When Baba says 1 out of 1,000,000, and out of that million, the one of the, it's like, oh my God.
Or like Lily Tomlin says, for fast relief, try slowing down.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you
Yeah. But I had never heard of the mystical language in all my time. And some of you know, I was in India a lot and stayed with Mandalay, and I don't know how that slid by me, but
there are so many things. It's like Manonaj, Baba, there's that article that a man that visited the public darshan at the barn in 52 goes and writes an article with all details about Manonaj. And yet when to anybody I know all the time, nobody was aware of Mononash was the reason for the 2-week seclusion when Baba first came. It was in order to complete Mononash for the benefit of the West. Now, Elizabeth was told that in a letter, but whether she didn't share it or whether it was lost, but everybody was focused on the
Baba,
experience of
yeah.
Baba. And
Right.
so so during the Baba's period when he was still in the body, and also when the Mandali were still, the focus was on, we looked to see people outside of us. But what Norina was saying in these messages today was, no, we look inward. We're going inward and
Yeah.
finding it's not this exalted person or knowledgeable person or whatever.
Yeah.
No, it's direct with Baba. And that was the other thing about when we were talking about don't worry, be happy was the other thing. I used to compare myself to this saint or that or whatever and say, oh my God, and we don't have to live, Narayan Maharaj's life or
Yeah.
we just have to live our life, our sanskar,
Yeah,
Right.
she was
and find
explicit.
Baba in that. I
She
mean,
was
how
explicit
beautiful.
about that earlier on. She was explicit not to look
Yeah.
at other people for your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Who said that?
about-
I'm sorry, Diana, who said
Repeat
that?
And it was
that,
part of what we heard today through the reading.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Say
Yeah,
it
you're
again.
talking about somebody.
We are not to look elsewhere to find the model for how to find God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got it right in us.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
Right.
that this mystical language is triggering that. And
Yeah,
because
but
one of the
that is why it didn't come up until now. It was like Baba put it on ice, so to speak. It was
yeah.
in plain sight. All these things were
Right.
It's like the life
print.
messages, the significance of the last period of Baba being his life period is only become significant now. And what is the life period? It's he empowers us to make our own choices. And how do we make our own choices? We have to look within, and then it's really amazing.
Yeah.
But
It's nothing necessarily other than our daily life,
Right.
wherever we live it.
oh, really?
How big of a relief? Talk about how do you spell relief? You're
But
trying.
don't worry, be happy. This was, it's a short story, but before I went and spent a lot of time in India, my half sister found me. And anyway, she sent me this big orange button that said, don't worry, be happy. I'll try to remember and bring it next week so I can show it to you. Anyway, and quite big. And anyway, the long and the short, it was on our kitchen table. I had to go into town. There was a lady coming in who was helping to do some cleaning because I was doing a workshop that weekend. So it was on the desk, on the kitchen table. Anyway, I went off, I came back. I don't know how many weeks later, she came back to my home, our home, sorry. And anyway, I said, oh, how you doing? And she said, I just want to talk to you before I leave today. And I said, sure. So we sat, she said, can we sit down? And I said, sure. So we sit down and she said, you know that big orange button that you left on the kitchen table before you left? And I went, yeah. And she said, I have to tell you, and these tears filled up in her eyes. And she said, I was going to clean your house, go home and take my life.
Oh,
That button, when I saw that, I couldn't do it.
oh my
Wow.
God.
And
Mm.
it was like, whoa. But
Oh.
it to me was probably one of the big realizations. You know, when Baba tells you, don't put that button away, leave it there, even though you think it's yourself. I don't know if that was me. Leave it there.
Baba's picture was on the button even.
No,
there was
no. It was just a big round orange
Ah,
button.
ah,
It's just over there, but
ah.
I'll show it to you next time. And it's just got the writing. Baba's picture's not on it.
Oh,
That's great.
wow.
Yeah. I mean,
That
she
poor-
may or may not have known I was a Baba lover. Like we had never really talked about that. It was like, for me, that was a big moment. Big moment.
I remember taking off from LA in 1968. I packed up and I moved up to Berkeley
Mm.
because it was freedom of speech and all this. And it
Mm.
was a very courageous thing because I had suffered a lot of depression. So for me to just pack up and, but before that, like 1 year before that, my roommate, we used to share housing so you could keep the rent down in the university.
Right.
She brings this picture and she says, "Look what I got." It was a "Don't worry, be happy" card. And I was like a dog after a bone. I thought if you didn't worry, life would be worse. And I couldn't have handled it worse, you know? And she gave it to me. She never came to Baba, but she's like a
Yeah.
dear friend, you know, she doesn't understand. I says, it was a lifesaver too,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I had a neighbor, I was still living at home shortly before this, and I was very depressed. What could you blame it on? You're just depressed. And I mean, they could call it polar opposite or whatever their name, but it's really a bummer. And this neighbor thought she was doing me a favor. She comes over, I was 23, and she said, "You better snap out of it." Kind of to me, and so my parents didn't hear, "You better snap out of it. These are the best years of your life." Oh, it was the worst thing she could have said to me. I went, "Oh my God, the worst, the best years." Oh, Baba, I'm headed for trouble. You know, and then I heard more about Baba in the Bay Area, the whole thing going on, you know. Yeah, yeah. But thank God, but it's like a similar thing because, you know, being very raised, very Catholic, I'm not going to take my life and burn in hell's fire. I mean, really, it could, at least I wasn't burning physically. It was mental. And
Yeah. Yeah.
wow, you know, it's like, wow, pull yourself up by your own bootstrap. That kind of it's like,
Yeah. You
yeah,
just don't know. Yeah.
that is such a story.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Wow, Wendy.
Yeah.
Gotta go, Jay Baba. Thank you.
Yeah, we gotta
Hey,
go
Baba.
too. Amen, Baba.
Dave,